All right, guys, on this week's product spotlight, we're going over our 2024 and up Mustang GT and Dark Horse carbon fiber intake system.
Twin take.
All right, so if you guys have been following along on our Dark Horse build series stuff, which I have the car behind us here, you would have seen the development process we were going through on our air intake system. So we did baseline numbers, we did obviously power numbers on the prototype setup that we did, and we also talked to you guys in comments and emails and phone calls about things that you guys wanted to see, and also changes that we wanted to make based off of what you guys had as far as input. So we took a lot of that in, a lot of it even being just stuff like, say, the air filters over here that we have, going with blue and red. So you got two different color options there. We have 3K weave, which is a twill, and a forged as well. So we ended up doing both, and then you guys have that option. A few things that we ran into, even on the dyno and some other stuff from a CAD standpoint. We played around a lot with the opening on the lid. So as you can see behind us, and as you can see on one of these cars if you have one, the lower airbox design is actually really good. The front snorkel of the airbox actually runs out to the grill on the car. So you're getting a nice direct airflow, a nice clean airflow from the front of the car into the box. And the factory box actually uses up the space that's provided in the engine bay from the factory. So you have a really good use of area. In other words, what I'm getting at is the factory lower box is a really solid design, and there's not a lot of restriction in it. It works really well. Now, going back to the lid side of things, if you're looking at the lid on the factory car, it's very limiting as far as the lid's very close to the filter. It kind of snuffs it out a little bit. There are other options on the market, for instance, the Roush style lid where they're modifying it, the factory style lid, they're modifying it to make it more open, essentially, as far as the area inside the box. So what we did is we took a step beyond that. What we ended up doing was, obviously we made the lid taller. We used the rest of the area that we had between the top of the lower box and the bottom of the hood. And we also added a vent to the side of the box. So the main thing, you know, obviously in a cold air intake system, and we've covered this many times on our GT500 air intakes, you don't want static air. A lot of people don't talk about static air. Static air is when you're sitting at the line, you're getting ready to, say, launch at the drag strip or pull out the race on a road course, and you crack the throttle body open. There's nothing pushing air into the airbox because the vehicle's sitting stationary. So you have a static airflow. The only airflow that you're getting is what's generated by the pistons pulling in that volume. So what happens is, if you have a box and that filter's fully contained and you have no airflow in the front of the vehicle, what happens is that box physically gets warm because obviously it's sitting in an engine bay that's potentially 200 degrees because of what the engine's operating at. So you have that box sitting there, and that box is obviously getting hot. And what happens is everything inside that box gets a base temperature that gets hot, especially if you're sitting still. Say, like, for instance, you're in the staging lanes. You know, you're getting ready to come up to make a drag strip pass. Everything's sitting there just heat soaking slowly. So what happens is when you leave the line, you get this really hot charge of air because you have nothing to flush it out of the box. So as you go and you create more vehicle speed and everything can start pushing into the air box or the air system as far as the intake goes, at that point, you bleed it out and now you have nice fresh air that's cool going into the engine, which everybody understands that concept. But the static thing's overlooked. So what that vent and volume in the lid actually helps us deal with is we're putting these out towards the fender well. And what that allows it to do is, rather than having to pull air through the grill when you crack your throttles open from a stop, it basically gives it a bypass. And the bypass area is open to the fender wells of the car, which obviously out by the fender, by the headlight where this is open to, you obviously don't have the same heat soak going on, or the same heat trying to pour into that box in that area, because it's opposite sides of the engine. So we ended up playing around with this opening quite a bit to get the best, you know, static flow, to get the best actual initial hit on the car when we pull out. And it actually helped out a lot. So we were able to actually iron out the intake air temperatures from a standstill and get them really dialed, because we ran it multiple ways: closed, open, small opening, big opening, etc. So that was a lot of the stuff we liked dialing in on the lid there. On the tubes themselves, the one cool thing about this intake system, no tuning required. So this is a drop-in system. You can put it on a stock car, does not require a tune. The way that the MAF sensor is put in these tubes is really cool, because we're obviously calibrating this inside size. So all of this is based off of obviously mold work. And when we lay these up, we're laying it up to a perfect thickness. So in other words, if you have a rotomolded intake, the way a rotomold works, you're melting plastic, or you're putting plastic in essentially a chamber that has a mold. You're melting it, spinning it, and it's pushing it out into this cavity. Well, it's very inefficient from a thickness standpoint, because there's a lot of variables there. So what happens is you go cross-sectional on the MAF, and the issue with that is you'll get variances in that. So the ID will change because you're not getting a nice coating, say, inside the mold for the plastic, and it varies, and then that makes it hell on the tuner. It makes it hell on the computer to compensate. You run into all kinds of issues with that. So one of the big things to do in the industry in general is to do a billet mass airflow housing, which works great. It allows you to hold that machine tolerance. It works really well. What we ended up doing in this instance is we're working on keeping the flow nice and straight. So you can see in this tube, you'll actually notice there's a straight section in here. So rather than just coming out and getting a nice flowing curve, we're actually focusing on making sure all the air is properly flowing over the MAF sensor. Cross-sectional flow for a MAF setup is very crucial. So by doing that, and by keeping all the transitions really nice and the flow straight, we're not having tuning issues. You know, you're keeping the car running very well. We're increasing flow because of how we're going about doing that, all while allowing that cross-section to stay the proper size. So it allows you to bolt it on a factory car. You don't have to change the tuning. But if you do change the tuning, this helps tremendously. So obviously we're increasing airflow across the board. On an untuned car, we were seeing about 15 to 18 horsepower pretty consistently on rear tire. So rear wheel horsepower seen 15, 18. Now, obviously if you're gonna tune the car, you're gonna be able to increase that, because you're able to move a lot of other things. You're able to move timing, you're able to move torque limiters, etc. So if therefore you need more air into the engine, clearly a cold air intake setup is gonna help you do that. So, but the nice thing is it's not a necessity. And that was the main thing with this kit, is we wanted you to be able to take a factory car, throw an intake system on it, and you're ready to go out of the gate. You immediately feel a power difference. You immediately get the sound difference. And then obviously the look. You know, one of the main things we really wanted to focus on with this kit, because of it being a dual throttle body car or a dual throttle body engine, we really want that symmetrical look. We wanted everything to flow really well. So we really focused on that. We put a lot of time into that. Being that the Roush blower setups utilize the factory air intakes and the dual throttle body setup, these actually pair really, really well with the Supercharger kit because they flow more air and help the blower breathe better and make more power. So if you have a Roush blower setup for a 24 plus Mustang, this is an awesome route to go. All right guys, now that you know the details of the product and what we were shooting for and all the little changes we've made and what it looks like on the car, etc., go back and check out the videos that we did on the Dark Horse build series where we did the prototype and the concept stuff and the testing on the dyno. You get to see some power number differences, etc. You'll also get to see us bolting these on and off the car quite a bit, from the prototype all the way to the sample carbon fiber pieces. So that'll help you at least understand the install process and what it looks like on the car and the sound, etc. So if you want to check those out, that'd be really cool. We'll throw a link in the description. Also, if you like this content, like the video, subscribe. We'd like to do a lot more of it. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.